What's up, guys? My name is Tim Roswick, and today we're talking about the difference between design and development and why you might want to work on one first if you're learning. So in game development, in this beautiful world of game creation, a lot of us use game development and game design as interchangeable terms. A lot of us look at, oh, what do you do? I do game design. I do game development. It's the same thing in a lot of people's eyes. And first of all, I just want to point out, I know this is semantics, I know this is like, being nitpicky here, but I want to point out that there are differences between game design and game development. And mainly the fact that game development is actually the act of technically building a game. Game design is the act of actually designing the systems and mechanics from a pen and paper point of view of what those things do. So one of the bigger mistakes that I see, because I've played a lot of games now. I played a lot of games, for indie games, like in progress from actual developers on Feedback Friday. I played a lot of games that get sent to me on Discord and email. And I've noticed that there are developers that are new to game development, new to the technical process of making games, that try and also invent new game design. They try and invent new genres. They try and invent new mechanics. And one of the things that I've kind of adopted as a belief system is that it's almost always better to learn the technical side of making games before you jump into the design side. And the reason for that is building something technically from an engine or from programming or from, whatever it takes to actually build the thing, software, game, whatever you're building, is a lot different than designing that thing, than actually figuring out where things go and how things fit together and how things work. And, especially when it gets into more complex games like economy design or even multiplayer, balancing multiplayer, like if you got different characters or something like that in a fighting game, making them different but balanced and still fun. That stuff is hard work, man. And that takes a lot of playtesting, a lot of feedback, a lot of people playing your game to get that stuff right. And I see a lot of people trying to design and develop their first game simultaneously. And there's a reason why in a lot of my videos I recommend that people start Pong for their first game and just make that. One, because it's technically simple. Technically, the development challenge of Pong is very simple. It's 2 moving things and 1 bouncing ball. That's all it is. So you've got to learn angles. You've got to learn variables. You got to learn a little bit of, programming and all that. But technically, it's a lot simpler than anything else. Now, the thing is, if you take the technical simplicity of Pong and you try and design a game with your own rules, you may not understand the aspects of design, and as a result, you end up building something that isn't fun. And fun is one of those things that, like, everybody strives for. Everybody wants to make a game that's fun. I don't think all games need to be fun. I think they need to be entertaining. I feel like that's a different video. But I wanted to point out that if you are developing Pong, if you work and you spend your time on building Pong, you know that game's design is sound. Same thing with Asteroids or Space Invaders or any of these basic games, right? If you just work on the technical challenge of building those games, you can be sure that the design side is already handled. You know it's going to be fun. You know it's going to be interesting. And you can work on the technical challenge of building your technical skill. If you throw in the design stuff and figuring out who to kill and how to kill them and what the type of thing is and how it all works and how it all fits together and what happens when the player kills somebody and what happens when the enemy kills the player. If you spend all your time working on those design issues, you're not going to learn as much technological development. And I feel like that the technical skill, it's going to piss some people off when I say this, but I feel like the technical skill is less important because there's so many tools these days where you can use. It's important. You need technical skill to build a game, right? But I feel like the technical skill is less important because we have so many drag and drop game creators. We have so many simple logic brick game creators. We have so many games engines out there that can make games simply and effectively and quickly, that I think is less important than the actual skill of designing fun systems, of creating fun mechanics. Not to say that it's not important, because it absolutely is. I just think if you look at a game as two halves, one the development, one the design, I think the technical side is easier to find. It's easier to do. It's easier to execute. It's easier to build. It's easier to find people that do it. It's easier to find people that are good at it, and so on and so forth, than the design side. And so when you tackle both of these things at the same time, especially if you're a beginner, it can be overwhelming and it can be frustrating, because what you can end up with is something that you worked really hard on technically that doesn't really make sense as a game. And that's no fun, man. Like, and I've played a couple games on Feedback Friday that don't feel like games. And it's hard to describe to someone that what they have is not, I don't want to say not fun, because I don't think that's fair, but I don't feel like it is some of the stuff that I played doesn't feel like it has interesting choices enough to where it feels like a game. Some of it just feels like a scripted sequence, or some of it, like, I've played games before that kind of play themselves. Like, there's been several games that I played, and you can stare at them and, like, they counters tick up and things happen and, stuff goes on, but they don't really require interaction. And so from a design perspective, they could use some work. But I think what that comes from is trying to tackle design and development at the same time, rather than learning development. And then once you've made a few games technically, figuring out, okay, now I want to design my own game. And I get it, right? I've done the same thing. I made that mistake. Every time I made a game, I wanted to dive in design and development wise. And I think the one way where maybe this works a little bit, where you can kind of do both, and it's one of the reasons why the majority of my games are mobile, and that's because, like, actual single mechanic mobile games, I think, work really well to kind of merge the design and the technical side of things. Because when you're sticking to one mechanic, when you stick to something super simple, then you can worry about the development of it and just iterate on that. And since it's so simple, nothing gets very complex. It doesn't go on for months. Like some of the mobile games, when we did Finish Friday, I was finishing them anywhere in between 3 and 5 hours. And like the last Finish Friday we did, I actually made an entire game from scratch in 10 hours. So with that kind of short timeline, it made sense to kind of merge the design and development. The same thing with game jams. It can be interesting and fun to kind of do that. But as far as like when you're learning game development on a longer scale, right? You're trying to learn all these different skills that you need to make a video game. I'm talking over years, right? Tackling the design first is a good way to get discouraged, because if you tackle design and development at the same time, or you tackle design first, you can end up again with something that's not fun or doesn't make sense as a game or plays itself. And then your frustration goes through because people don't know how to play it, or they don't understand it's fun, or maybe somebody's rude to you and they can discourage you. Whereas if you just build something technically challenging, but they've got their design worked out, like Space Invaders, like, Tetris, like Pong, or anything like that. Or you even build, like, pick a certain genre. I want to make an FPS game. I want to make a bullet hell game. If you pick genres and you stick within that, then you can just work on the technical specs and you know what you're building, and you don't have to deal with feature creep and scope creep and all that stuff. So I just feel like in the beginning, it's better to separate design and development. And I think you should focus on development, because learning the technical skill as a solo developer, I think is going to be important for you to build the things that you want to build. But as far as delivering a fun product, the design stuff is really going to be where you bring it home, and how you work on that design thing, how you actually design all the elements is going to be really, really important in the game. And you want to have the technical skill to back that up, to back up the design changes that you make. So that's all I got for you today. I hope you found it useful. It's one of those things that, it's a little weird. It's a little off topic subject, but Hope you found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment down below. Have you ever gotten the design wrong? Have you ever messed up with design? Have you ever tried to do design first and then just couldn't carry through with it? Let me know in the comments. But once again, my name is Tim Roswick, and I'll see you again tomorrow.